All right. Welcome everyone to our respiratory illness. I'm calling it the Lunch and Learn, but it's just a time for us to talk about some of the major respiratory illnesses of the season and to talk about how we can stay healthy during this time of year when it's particularly hard. So I'm going to share a presentation. Myself and Tyann, who will introduce ourselves shortly, are both on to help you go through this process in this presentation. It will take probably about 35 minutes to actually go through the presentation, and we should have plenty of time for questions. Try to monitor the chat and for questions while we're going along. Please feel free to step in and interrupt, but if you want to wait to the end, we should have plenty of time during this hour to get to everything. So you should be able to see my screen now. And this is keeping safe during respiratory illness season. So we're going to discuss how to protect yourself, your family, your community during this time of year. Okay, so I'm going to present, these are your presenters, myself and Tyann. My name's Alyssa Fine. I am a registered nurse and certified diabetes care and education specialist. And I'm also the Wellness and Diabetes Program Coordinator for the Cowlitz Tribal Health Clinic and Health Services. So that's where my expertise comes from. Before I was with the tribe, I actually did infectious disease nursing. So I'm really passionate about keeping people healthy and preventing the spread of infectious disease. So I really appreciate being here today and talking to you all. I'll hand it over to Tyann.
Thank you. My name is Tyann Connor, and I'm a descendant of some settlers from Ireland, England, and Scotland. I've been working with the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board for the last 3 years already. And I am the Native Boost project manager. And Native Boost actually is a childhood vaccine confidence project. I also work with Vaccinative, and that is for adults. So we're going to talk a little bit more at the end. We'll give you some resources and everything. But if you're not familiar with the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, we serve the tribes of Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And so the tribes are our bosses, and we do anything we can to help, in our case, increase vaccine confidence and educate about vaccines. So I'm very excited to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
We are very excited to have Tyann here, and we get so much great support from the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, not just in the context of vaccines, but for a lot of what we do. So it's exciting to partner on this presentation. So this is just a presentation overview. So we're going to discuss some general information about the flu, COVID-19, and RSV, which are kind of the three big viruses spreading during this time of year. We will also share important information about how vaccines work and why you need to get some vaccines each year, because we hear a lot of questions about that. We're going to talk about how some of the typical vaccine side effects that you might face and how vaccine safety is ensured for everyone who gets one. And we will end with a discussion of where you can get vaccinated and some other resources that Native Boost and Vaccinative can provide. So starting with the flu, what actually is the flu? I think there's a lot of misinformation about what the flu actually is out there. So I love that we start with this one, because I think a lot of people think about it just as a stomach bug or something that really it's not. The flu is an infection caused by a virus, and it does attack your whole body. So you're going to see a lot of these symptoms impact what we call, systemic symptoms. Symptoms of flu include fever, chills, cough, sore throat, runny nose, headaches, muscle aches, and tiredness. Sorry, that's a long list, but you're going to see some of these repeated as we go. So try to keep them in the back of your mind. But these are kind of your typical ones that you might have when you get the flu. So the flu can be mild for some people, and it might be just kind of a minor sickness. You have to stay home, take care of yourself. But for others, it might actually result in hospitalization and death. And that's especially for those who are most vulnerable, like people with certain medical conditions or elders. So in this quote, Tam Lutz, who's a Lummi Nation tribal elder, shares her thoughts. She says, my great-grandma lost multiple children to the flu. Before we had the flu shot, it was common for people to get very sick or die from the flu. So I don't know if you all have relatives or friends or others in the community that you think about who've really been impacted by the flu, but I think it's amazing we have these tools now to prevent the spread of something that has caused so much devastation. I know I've seen people hospitalized from the flu, and if there's a way to prevent it, I want to do my best to do so as a nurse and a community member. So moving on to COVID-19. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. We're not going to overdo it. I know we've all heard so much about COVID lately. And again, COVID-19 is caused by a virus, just like the flu is caused by a virus, but this one is caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it attacks your whole body. Again, lots of repeated words here. Lots of repeated symptoms too. So some common symptoms include fever, chills, cough, sore throat, runny nose, headaches, muscle aches, and mental fog. Some people actually lose their taste or their taste or their smell when they have certain strains of COVID, and they might feel some confusion, nausea, diarrhea, or vomiting as well. And definitely the different strains might impact people differently. So you'll see it kind of changed over the past few years. COVID doesn't just cause immediate symptoms. The effects from COVID can actually occur for a much longer period. So long COVID is a wide range of new, returning, or ongoing health problems that people experience after being infected with the virus that causes COVID-19. So most people who get COVID do get better within a few days or even a few weeks. So long COVID symptoms are typically those that occur or last after 4 weeks after being infected. And anyone who is infected can experience long COVID. The best way to prevent long COVID is to prevent COVID, right? So just prevent the illness, and staying up to date with vaccines can help prevent COVID and long COVID. And you can see some of these symptoms are maybe ongoing from the acute phase, and some of them might be new, like depression or headaches or things like that. COVID is a pretty new infection, and we're still learning a lot. And one thing that we're learning is that there's other issues with getting COVID besides just the initial symptoms or the long COVID. Other diseases have been linked to COVID-19 infection as well. And I think we're going to continue to hear a lot about this as more research is ongoing. Several studies have linked new onset diabetes to COVID-19 infection. I have actually seen this in our clinic here. So I've seen new onset diabetes happen soon after COVID infection. I can think of a handful, and we have a pretty small population, so that's concerning to me. And I do really want to encourage anyone, especially if you're at a high risk for diabetes or pre-diabetes and you've had COVID but haven't been screened since, to maybe go into your primary care provider and ask for a screening to make sure that that's not something that's developed since you've been infected with COVID-19. There's also studies that are taking place right now that show that COVID-19 causes severe neurological complications in people with dementia. According to these results, COVID-19 appears to accelerate disease progression in all types of dementia. And further research is definitely needed, but we're starting to see a connection there too. So some really concerning kind of very long-term impacts of being infected with COVID that, again, emphasize the importance of prevention, right? Which we're going to get to real soon. One more virus to talk about though first. So we have RSV. You might have heard about RSV, especially these past couple of years when it's become really problematic. RSV is a respiratory syncytial virus, and it is a very common respiratory virus that usually causes minor cold-like symptoms. Most people will recover in a week or two, but RSV can also be very serious for certain populations. And that's specifically for infants and older adults who are more likely to have severe symptoms and be hospitalized. Again, take a look at these symptoms. They affect the whole body. Fever, fatigue, cough, sore throat, runny nose, congestion, loss of taste and smell. So lots of issues in the lungs and breathing areas. And this is what I was kind of trying to get to earlier. It's really hard to know what you have by just the symptoms. Look at how much overlap exists. And this might be a small table. I see some like trying to zoom in maybe on the screen right now. But the main point of this is that without a test, it can be really hard to know what you have. So you can't really just guess a lot of times without a laboratory confirmed diagnosis or a home test or something like that. You probably will not have all of these symptoms. You probably will have some combination of what's checked off, and it can give you some idea about what's going on. But generally speaking, there's just so much overlap. So those are the three main viruses that we're going to talk about today for respiratory illness season. And it's important to understand before we can know how to prevent something, we have to know how illness can actually spread. So these are all spread kind of two main ways, either by droplets in the air or droplets on surfaces. When you breathe in droplets in the air, you can get sick. So we've all heard about like the 6-foot rule during COVID, right? That's trying to prevent that droplets in the air from spreading between people. We also know that, better ventilation and stuff can also prevent that type of spread. Droplets on surfaces can get you sick when you touch something that has the disease droplets on it, like a doorknob, a light switch, something out in public, and then you touch any of your mucous membranes in your eyes, your nose, your mouth, so you can get sick that way as well. So what does this mean? There are multiple ways to protect yourself from illness. And so these are some of the healthy habits that can keep you safe during respiratory illness season. Washing your hands well and often with soap and water is a key way. And we want to do that for at least 20 seconds with really good friction. If you have difficulties counting or keeping the seconds, I like to sing Happy Birthday twice in my head. When that in nursing school and never stopped. So that's what I do when I wash my hands. Making sure you're getting, all the different surfaces of your hands and really doing that well. Wearing a mask can help. Remember those droplets, if they're contained within that mask or you're protected from breathing them in because you're wearing a mask, that can protect you as well. When soap and water isn't available, hand sanitizer, alcohol-based hand sanitizer can be useful. You may want to carry a little one around with you in your purse. That's super helpful. I like to keep a little pump in my car. So when I get back from like the grocery store, I'm like sanitizing my hands. It's not always convenient to wash your hands. So sanitizer can be really, really useful. Keeping your distance, again, that kind of 6-foot rule when you're in a public place, especially if it's super crowded or indoors, can really help. The closer we are for the longer period of time, that's just going to make us more susceptible. And finally, staying up to date with vaccines. This not only protects us, it protects our communities as well. So it's a super important way to stay healthy. So it's really important that everyone who is eligible gets vaccinated. Respiratory illnesses can be serious, and I can't stress this enough. All of our ancestors faced many serious illnesses like the flu and RSV, and some died from these. So even though we'd like to think that most of them are minor, people did die from them. They continue to die from them. But we have access to vaccines that can protect us. So everyone 6 months and older needs to get vaccinated against the flu and COVID, including young and healthy people. Pregnant people can also safely get vaccinated against flu at any time during pregnancy. American Indian and Alaskan Native babies should receive the RSV vaccine from birth to 19 months of age. And those over 60 years should also get the RSV vaccine. So when everyone who is able gets vaccinated, it makes it less likely that healthy people spread the flu or other respiratory illnesses to those that are most vulnerable. So again, this is something when you get a vaccine, you do it for yourself, but you also do it for your community. I like to, those that know me well have heard this, so my apologies, but I like to really talk about vaccination as like my civic duty. Like I wear a public health service uniform. To me, getting vaccinated is something I can do for my community, my country, my family, like it does make a difference. If we all get vaccinated, it makes a difference. And I think it's really important that we all take that responsibility. So we're going to kind of move into vaccine land right now and talk really specifically about vaccines, how they work, why they're safe, when you should get them, where you can get them, all the resources that are out there. So how vaccines work. I love this. I think vaccines are really cool, and I should probably talk about this for a really long time, but I'm just going to stick to the script. And if we have questions later, if anyone wants extra talk, we can talk about it. But we all have warrior cells that protect us from illness, which is so cool. They stand guard, and when diseases attack, they protect us. I like to think of vaccines as like training camp for these warrior cells. So they learn how to recognize and fight these illnesses. Each vaccine kind of gives them a script for how to protect against a certain illness. So flu, COVID-19, RSV, they teach them how to identify it quickly and fight it. So that way, when they are actually exposed to those vaccines, or those viruses in the wild, they're ready to go, they respond really quickly. We don't get as sick. We might not get sick at all, or our symptoms may be milder because our warrior cells are ready to go. Vaccines contain many natural ingredients that are common in the food we eat, including sugars and proteins. And after the vaccine kind of does its training camp thing and helps your body prepare to identify and fight the disease, it actually leaves your body completely. So it's not something that stays in your body. It really is just like a short-term training regimen. So we are less likely to get sick when we do get the vaccine. For example, the flu vaccine actually reduces the chances of you getting sick with the flu by about 50%. Getting vaccinated can also reduce the seriousness of illness if you do happen to get sick. So you hopefully will have just milder symptoms, less likely to be hospitalized. And then again, I can't stress this enough, vaccines don't only protect us, they protect our most vulnerable in our community, like our elders and children. So vaccines do protect us, our families, our communities for generations to come. Some people are unable to get vaccinated for whatever reason, either because they're truly allergic to the vaccine, or they don't have the immunity or the warrior cells in place to really utilize the vaccine. So every time we get vaccinated, we protect those people better too. So this is a really common question. Why do I need to get vaccines every year, specifically with the flu shot? And we might be seeing this with the COVID shot moving forward. Why do I have to keep getting these vaccines? It's super important, though, that you do. And that's because viruses are tricksters. They're sneaky. So about once a year, the flu and these other viruses may change how they look to try to fool your body. So they want to, outsmart your warrior cells. They want to stay strong too. So they're changing how they look and how they're identified. And so vaccines continue to be updated to keep up with virus changes. You might have heard about different strains of COVID or flu, and that's why we need to keep getting those vaccines on a regular basis. Some viruses are sneakier than others, and that's why we do need to get those more often than some other ones that we might get maybe once as a child. But the ones we're suggesting yearly is because they do change. So we need to get vaccines every year so our body is up to date on how to recognize and fight diseases. Also, over time, some of our warrior cells' ability to respond might diminish. So it's like a refresher course too for those cells. Okay, moving on. This is another big one. Are vaccines safe? How do we know they're safe? And I want to talk about the many different measures that are taken to ensure that vaccines are safe for everyone. So first, a little bit about vaccine history. The flu shot has been around for over 50 years. And when I read this slide, I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I kind of knew that, but I never thought about how long it was actually around for, 50 plus years. So a pretty long time to have a lot of experiences with and make sure something is safe. Some people think that the COVID-19 vaccine was created too quickly. and it was created very quickly. But it was developed using existing technology we know is safe for vaccines and effective. We also know that a lot of time, energy, and money was funneled into like the same vaccine creation process all at once. That rarely happens for one specific disease. So I think that also explains a lot about why things happen so quickly. When you put all that money and time behind it, things are just naturally going to speed up the process. But mostly it was used with technology we already know is safe. We know a lot about how to make a safe vaccine. And we know that millions have safely received both the COVID-19 and flu vaccines. And these include American Indian, Alaska Native people. So we do know that these are safe based on just a huge number of people who've received them without having any, like, very few severe side effects. All vaccines go through several rounds of testing. And this often takes thousands of volunteers to get done. I know I was super proud. My aunt actually volunteered for one of the COVID-19 vaccine trials, and it was so exciting to talk to her about it because we do need those people who are willing to take that risk, right, to test these vaccines, and it often just takes thousands of people to do it well. During vaccine testing, we test important questions like, is the vaccine safe? How does the body react to it? And it also helps us learn about the possible side effects that people might face when they do get the vaccine. All vaccines are only approved for public use after they go through thousands of hours of testing and are found to be safe and effective. Side effects should not, or common side effects must be mild in order for them to be approved. So we're talking things like the sore arm, which we'll talk about in a bit. And we can't confuse side effects with illness, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but that's another big question. And once vaccines are approved, we still continue to monitor them to make sure they are safe for use. So everyday people who get the vaccine can share how it made them feel, and we all have the power to kind of contribute in this way. I don't know if you guys remember back to like when you got your first COVID vaccines, there was a program called Be Safe, and you might have actually told someone, oh, this is how I felt after getting the vaccine. That's part of this continued monitoring that makes us sure that these vaccines are safe. And that way we can identify any vaccine risks and take action. So what are some of these vaccine side effects? Common side effects include soreness, redness, and swelling where you get the shot. I'm sure you've all experienced that sore arm before, right? I know when I give the vaccine, I'm like, okay, relax your arm. And even if you do, it's still going to be sore, but I try to, minimize that for patients. You also might have a fever, headache, or muscle ache. So some systemic side effects as well. Vaccine side effects typically go away in a few days. They often resolve what we call spontaneously, meaning like you're feeling icky and then all of a sudden you're feeling fine. I totally remember that from my second COVID vaccine when I got my second dose. I was like so icky for a few hours and then all of a sudden I felt great. And just a reminder that mild side effects are actually a good sign, because that's the sign that our warrior cells are doing what they should. They're preparing to see and fight the disease. They're kind of practicing. Again, their warrior cells are in training when we get a vaccine. So there might be some mild side effects. That's normal, that's good, that's your immune system working like it should. Side effects are not sickness. This is really important. Sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that mild vaccine side effects are actually them getting sick with the disease. This is not true. Vaccines cannot make you sick with the disease you are getting vaccinated against. There is no way for that to happen based on how vaccines are made. And again, it just strengthens our warrior cells by helping them to see and fight the disease. So those side effects are not sickness. I think sometimes also what happens that gets people confused is there's a time period from getting the vaccine for the vaccine to become truly effective. It is possible for you to get that illness between that time period and get sick. Again, that's not necessarily just because the timing works right after the vaccine. It doesn't mean the vaccine caused it. It's just an unfortunate correlation. Serious side effects from vaccines are very rare. But if you're experiencing anything beyond the common side effects, do get medical attention, obviously. And when you do, make sure that the healthcare provider you see reports your experience to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS. If you're uncertain whether your provider did report that, you can file a report yourself as well. And again, this is just another way that ongoing monitoring is happening. Anyone can report to VAERS, and then those reports are kind of sorted through by the experts and looked at and decided on how to follow up, what might be legitimate concerns, what might be unrelated. So hopefully I've done a fabulous job of convincing you that getting vaccinated is a really good idea this year. So let's talk about where you can get vaccinated. I want to say this is an easy to read chart, and it is if it's full screen and you have a really big monitor. It might be harder if you're on a phone or something. If you need a copy, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to provide it. And this kind of goes through based on your age and who you are, and which vaccines, when you should get it, how often, things like that. I do want to emphasize that flu activity typically peaks in February, so it isn't too late to get vaccinated now, for sure. All of these are still a good thing to get. If you are eligible for all 3 vaccines, or perhaps 2 of the vaccines, they can be given at the same time. So make it easy, do it in one trip. You got 2 arms, we can do it. And I did want to address a common question that I often get, and our nurses said they get a lot too, is if I recently had the flu or COVID, should I get vaccinated? For COVID, we do recommend that you consider waiting 90 days after your most recent COVID infection to get the vaccine. That's only because you do have some warrior cells still there who know how to recognize that virus really well for those first 90 days. Those tend to fade after those 90 days. So waiting 90 days gives you kind of extended protection from what we call natural immunity, and then adding on the vaccine provided immunity beyond that time. You can still get it less than 90 days. I want to strongly point that out. There's nothing, it's not contraindicated. You can absolutely still get it, but if waiting makes sense for you, you can also wait. Getting the annual flu shot after having a flu-like illness is also really, really important. And that's for a number of reasons. One is you may have gotten sick with a strain that's not covered by the vaccine. The flu shot covers 4 different, the most common strains of flu, but not all of them. So you may have gotten one strain, but you still have the potential to get another strain, and the flu shot will help protect you from that. Also, like I pointed out before, symptoms for flu, RSV, COVID, there's a lot of overlap. So unless you got tested, you might not have actually had the flu. It might have been something else entirely. So even though you've had symptoms, it might not be the flu, you should still get vaccinated. And even if you got one of the strains that was covered, again, there's 4 strains, so you still have a chance of getting one of the other 3. So lots of good reasons to still get the flu shot, even if you've had the flu. Same with COVID, RSV. So how can you get vaccinated? Well, I want to say first, if you are a patient at the health clinic here in Longview, we do offer vaccines here. So please do call us at the front desk and get set up for an appointment. So we can provide all 3 of these vaccines if you're eligible. If you are tuning in from either farther afield or you have a different primary care provider, you should contact your local tribal clinic, IHS facility, or any other local clinic to talk about getting vaccinated. Most pharmacies also offer these vaccines, so that's a kind of quick and convenient way to get them. You can also contact your state health department, and local news outlets often have information on how to get a vaccination appointment as well. Another great way to find out about vaccines is to visit vaccines.gov. If you are younger and hipper than me, you can also text your zip code to 438829, or even call 1-800 number to get vaccine information. So many ways. So I don't think, I couldn't find a vaccine should be an excuse, but if you do need help navigating all these options, we can definitely talk to you about that. So I'm going to hand it over to Tyann now to talk about different resources. and go from there.
Thank you so much. That was such a great presentation. I might steal some of your ideas for when I give this presentation next. So, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that an illness might be very mild for you if you get it, but it could be deadly for somebody else. And I just want to make sure that we don't take these illnesses lightly because they can be very dangerous. And even for people who are very healthy, and feel like they're very strong and fit, you can still be sort of taken down by one of these illnesses. So not taking our health for granted, I think, is really important. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we do with Native Boost and Vaccinative is we want to provide accurate, relevant information about vaccines so you can make the right decision for yourself and your family. We know that tribal communities have experienced a lot of trauma around the medical field and medical community for hundreds of years, and we know that this isn't a decision that's easy for people to make always. So we want to provide information that is helpful for you and that answers a lot of questions and maybe makes you curious to ask more questions when you go to the doctor. So we saw this little chart earlier about each of the vaccines, why it's important. Next slide. So we have a lot of resources that can help educate you, your family members, your friends on both the Vaccinative website for adults and the Native Boost website for kids. Up in the far left corner is the Vaccines 101. That's a 2-page handout, gives you all the information about how vaccines work. If you want to pass the information along to somebody who wasn't here today, this is a really great resource, and you can download all of our information or just view it on the website as well. There's flyers about RSV and the flu. There's little reminders about how to stay safe during respiratory illness season. And we do have a lot of social media messages. We at the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board have a Facebook page and Instagram, and we put a lot of messages out like this one at the top middle that says help them fight the flu so they can do what they do. That's one of the big messages that we give, is that we want our kids to be safe so they can get out there and do the things that are important to them, like going to school, going to visit grandparents safely, and doing their sports. We all know that that was something that kids really missed out on when the pandemic was keeping everybody at home. And so we want to protect them and give them all of the chances they can to be out in the world and doing the things that make them healthy and happy. And we know if you're going to hold an event, maybe you're going to be celebrating the holidays coming up, think about the number of people that you're going to have over, the size of your event space or the room that you're going to be in. I just had a gathering at my house this weekend. So we asked everybody to do a COVID test before they came and make sure that they had no symptoms before they came over. Everybody was happy to do that because no one wants to give the gift of an illness to somebody else. And if you're going to have a gathering, maybe keep the windows open or a fan going to have good airflow and circulation. Make sure that everybody has hand sanitizer, masks if they feel safer doing that. And make a plan. If somebody does get COVID while they're attending your event, make a plan for what to do. Maybe get them to the doctor if they need to, or get them home safely, and then monitor them afterwards to make sure they don't need any medicines or any other help. And if you're doing a work meeting that could be a Zoom meeting instead of an in-person meeting, that's a really good idea during the flu season, which I know is pretty extended, especially in the Northwest. But it saves lives and is really handy. And I really appreciate having the opportunity. I'm in Portland today, so I'm excited to be able to be here with you, even though I'm not in Longview right now. We also have other fun things like the stickers. You'll see that at the bottom right. Flu season doesn't have to be rough. Get vaccinated and protect your pack. So we have 10 different designs. We are printing those right now, and we're going to be giving those out to the clinics. So if you need some fun stickers, that help share important messages about vaccines. We're going to give some of those to Alyssa as soon as we have them printed. And we're constantly creating new materials as information about vaccines is updated or it changes, or we just do more during the flu season and during other times of year where it's important to remember to get vaccinated. And I just love the work that I do because vaccines are kind of a miracle. And I think people sometimes don't take them seriously because we haven't had, in our generation, we haven't had to experience some of these illnesses that we're now protected against because of vaccines. So I like to share that information with other people, but you don't have to go back too far to hear about those stories about people who, Tam's family lost family members to the flu. So I'm always excited to talk about vaccines and the ways we can protect ourselves in our community and future generations. I think that's really important. So next slide. So if you have your phone, you can scan the QR codes here. They go directly to the Vaccinative or the Native Boost web pages, or you can email us for more information at those email addresses at the bottom. And if you have any questions, we would love to answer them. Don't be shy. You can either unmute or type them into the chat if your microphone's not working. We know we gave you a lot of information, so we can give you a few seconds to sort of digest and then ask questions if you have them.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, do you have to be 60 or over to get the RSV vaccination?
That's what's recommended right now, is for those 60 and older, or for babies as well, like we went over.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the age that's recommended, because that's the age where the risk does go up for complications and such.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Thank
RSV
you.
is a newer vaccine, which we're excited to have. So I know there's probably a lot of questions about that one, but we're excited to see that it's been like rolled out so widely, and we're really excited to offer it in the clinic here.
You guys were very informative and smiley, and thank you for doing the class for us.
Well, thanks for coming, Deb. We appreciate it.
Is there anybody that the RSV vaccine is not recommended for?
You mean within those age groups?
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot more about the elders age group, so I'll talk about that, and maybe Tyne can chime in too if she knows. I know that generally speaking, it's recommended for those, especially American Indian, Alaska Native, who are 60 plus. But it is a decision that they encourage you to make with your provider. So it's called shared clinical decision making, meaning you sit down and talk about your risks for the illness and your risks of the vaccines. Yeah. But generally speaking, I've seen that it's recommended for everyone 60 plus right now. And do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry, I was clicking around and I lost my screen there. No, actually, always ask your provider. And with babies, especially those who are born premature, it's extremely important for them to be protected against RSV. And so from birth, and then American Indian and Alaska Native babies are more, have higher risk for RSV complications. So getting that vaccine up to 19 months is really, really important. But right now there's no reason, unless there's something that the baby is allergic to that they know for sure, which is pretty unusual for babies to have vaccine ingredient allergies. But always talk to the provider if you have specific questions or concerns about something you've experienced with a vaccine before.
Okay. Have you heard anything about RSV ingredient allergies?
The vaccine is really new. I haven't heard anything yet about that. Alyssa, have you?
I have not. Nothing specific towards RSV vaccines. No. I do have, I would say that for American Indian Alaska Natives over 60 and above, I would strongly recommend it for anyone. But if you have any chronic heart or lung condition, if you have a weakened immune system, if you have any like severe underlying medical condition, or if you live in kind of communal living homes, those would be reasons to even make it more of a priority.
Mhm.
That's probably what your
Yeah.
doctor or provider will be looking at.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe that because I have an ingredient allergy to the COVID vaccine. I still get it, but have to stay at the clinic all day long and deal with it. But so I'm kind of thinking maybe then if I do get the RSV vaccine, I should get it on a different day so they can keep an
Yeah.
eye.
And that's certainly a way to deal with it, and also to kind of separate out what might be causing any potential side effects for you. So you know in the future, if you were to get an
Yeah.
updated vaccine, which one you had problems with.
Yeah, I know my case is kind of different because it's not just regular side effects.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, if you know of an allergy, even more important to get it with your provider aware and knowledgeable and speak to them for sure.
yeah, they have her on speed dial when I walk in.
Any other questions? These are great. Again, feel free to type it in the chat. Don't feel like speaking up.
I'm going to put my work email address in the chat as well. So if you have any questions that came up regarding the parts of my presentation, then you can definitely reach out to me. Or you can email the Vaccinative or Native Boost emails as well.
I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Terry Baines with the Cowlitz Tribe. I was so diabetes has a bit of a compounding effect with COVID, and so I'm just kind of curious: is there a kind of an explanation, scientific explanation? I know with diabetes, your immune system's already compromised. Anyway, is that just kind of a general explanation for why? I know from my research from a person, because of a personal need, is that unmanaged diabetes is the primary culprit as far as the compounding factor that leads to mortality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question and a really difficult one to answer. So I think there's, this two-way street between diabetes and COVID, right? So we know that people who already have diabetes and then they get COVID, that the risk of complications from having COVID does go up. And we do know that getting COVID in the short term, just like getting almost any illness, can make diabetes worse, right? Because for many reasons, but the most basic is that anytime we get sick, our body goes into a stress response, our blood sugars go up, and it's just harder to manage your diabetes. So there's all this short-term stuff that happens between the two. So that's why it's really important if you have diabetes to get the COVID vaccine so you don't get sick with COVID and potentially have greater complications. What we were talking about with these like connections between new onset diabetes and perhaps even, I think we'll probably see like worsening diabetes for people who already have it in the long term. I don't have the physiological explanation for why that happens. I don't know if anyone really does yet. I don't know, Tyann, if you've seen theories, or if it's so, it's going to be like a theory. Like we don't really know why COVID has these longer term effects on dementia, neurological function, on diabetes, something about the way the virus affects our body. So, but we are seeing that connection. So it's been really important to me to talk to our community, our patients, and just remind people that, regular diabetes screening is important regardless, but it might be something to think about and maybe put as a priority list if you've recently had COVID, especially because we know that American Indian Alaska Natives are at a high risk for diabetes regardless of their own personal history or family history. So definitely consider, going in, getting your A1C checked, getting a fasting blood sugar, whatever it is, to make sure that you're good after COVID.
Yeah, I have a
Thank
question.
you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead, Melanie.
Why are we just developing this vaccine for the respiratory? Why is it taking so long?
Why has it taken so long? I don't know. Tyann, do you know?
That either. Honestly, that's a great question. Let me Google it.
Yeah.
Have there been many cases of RSVP in elders in our area?
I also don't know the rate of that for our particular area. I know that RSV has hit very hard recently in general, but I'm not sure specifically for this area. But yeah, Melody, that's a great question. And sometimes it just has to do with how money gets spent, right?
That's
So-
exactly, that was one of the things that I was thinking is, maybe one of the first things I thought was, of course, what's gonna make, what's gonna be a popular one and protect the most people. But also, I think scientists learned so much from the development of the COVID vaccines that they're able to use that knowledge to then more easily create other vaccines. So I did just find an article. If you want to keep asking questions in chat, I'll skim it real quickly and see what else I can find.
The follow-up question, is RSV particularly dangerous for elderly because of their just generally not reduced health?
Yeah, I would say that most respiratory illnesses hit elderly particularly hard because as we get older, our warrior cells, our immune system do not respond quite as well as when we were younger. So, and then we also might see a higher rate of chronic conditions like lung disease, heart disease, diabetes that also makes people more at risk. So, but some of you might be familiar, and this is actually probably a good thing to bring up. So for those who are 65 and older, we have something called a high dose flu shot as well. So there's a flu vaccine that's stronger. It's basically the same stuff. It's just more of it for people who are 65 plus. We do that because that immune system response isn't quite as good when you get older, and that helps boost it and make that response a little stronger. So yeah, it's basically as we get older, we just don't fight things off quite as well as when we were younger.
Thank you.
No, good question. Any other questions while Diane does her really quick study into RSV vaccine?
So it does look like it was a more difficult vaccine to create. And they were working on it and it wasn't working. And then it took them a while. Yeah, it took them a while to understand how the virus actually worked and how to combat it. So it looks like it just took a long time. That's exactly what I'm reading. So the flu was a little bit easier and they had a lot longer time to figure out and unlock the secrets. Yep. And then the vaccines got sidelined by COVID. So they were already working on them and then COVID became their priority. So it seems like it would have been out quite a while ago.
Thanks, Diane. That's interesting. And thanks, Melody, for your question, because that's a great question. I think sometimes.
One
Go ahead.
question, if I may. Can we get a respiratory illness from our pets, our dogs, or, because sometimes they're sneezing and coughing. I wondered, is that transferable between humans? And I'm not sure.
Okay, I
With the
won't say
allergies
I'm
and
an
things.
expert on this, but I do know that, there are some viruses that can move from animals to people. I know that for COVID specifically, what we know is that people can give it to their pets, but it's very hard for pets to give it to people. So we do recommend that if you have COVID and you have pets, that you try to avoid contact, and keep them safe. It's typically pretty mild in pets, but we don't want them to get it if they don't have to. But it's really hard. You're probably unlikely to get it from your cat or dog. I don't know much about other viruses. Honestly, my brain has been on COVID for a while, so I haven't looked up like flu or RSV or any of those. I don't know if Cheyenne, you have any answers about pets.
Yeah, it's extremely uncommon to get respiratory illnesses from your pets. Some exceptions if you care for poultry in certain types of environments, which isn't very common in the United States. So like avian flu, we haven't seen a lot of that, but between like pets like cats and dogs, it's not common at all. These are really great questions. This is fun. Keep them coming. We have a couple more minutes.
All right. Well, I'll close up slowly. If anything comes up, feel free to interrupt me. But I will say that, you know, your providers, your nurses, we're all here to answer these questions. So if you walk away from here and still have some come up, I would not hesitate to call your provider's office. If you're a patient here in the clinic, you can, you know, give us a call and we can talk through any concerns you might have about these vaccines. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So I strongly encourage you to you know, to look to people that you trust about this and talk to them. And yeah, reach out to Tan, reach out to myself. I think most of you know how to get a hold of me, but I'll put my email in the chat as well. So you can have, oops, I always do. I think it might autocorrect to add another F in mine. It's only one F. I don't know why it always does that. Julie has a question. Is shedding an issue with these vaccines? Is it advisable for all members of a household to get vaccinated around the same time? It is not an issue with these vaccines. These are not live viruses in these vaccines. So you don't have to worry about, you know, being around anyone who's immunocompromised or anything like that. So yes, it'd be great if you all got vaccinated as a family. Yay, what a fun activity. But it's not, there's no healthcare reason to necessarily make that happen if it's not convenient for you all. I would say, you know, at this point in the season, getting a flu shot would be, you know, something to really think about getting sooner rather than later. We are, you know, getting to the more peak times, so we don't want to wait too long for that anymore. So I would make that a priority. Obviously, you can get all three at once too, so go ahead and just get them all. But no, you shouldn't have to worry about shedding or anything. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Again, please reach out to one or both of us, or if you still have questions, call the Tribal Health Clinic front desk if you're a patient and get on our schedule if you need a vaccine, or make an appointment with your own provider at the pharmacy. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us on our lunch. And thank you to Tyann for presenting with me today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was more fun than I expected. So I usually really enjoy my job, but you made it extra special. So thank you very much. Your patients are very lucky.
Thank you. You guys have a great
Thank
rest
you.
of your day.
You.
I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.